Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Mary Price, and I'm the Events and Marketing Director at the Shingo Institute at Utah State University. And today we're learning from Jay Timms, a seasoned organizational psychologist, on how to unlock your team's full potential and create a thriving, successful workplace. Jay has over 25 years experience transforming performance in some of the world's most successful companies, including Microsoft and EA Games. His pioneering efforts in process improvement have influenced government policies, and his mentorship has shaped hundreds of leaders, setting the stage for unprecedented organizational growth. Earlier this month, there was an article published on our website and in our newsletter. And if you're interested in reading that to learn more about today's topic, you can do that by visiting shingo.org/articles. And with that, Jay, I'll turn the time over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I am super excited to be with you today. Yeah, it's interesting when people hear organizational psychologists, they think usually they think one of three things. Number one is they think, oh crap, he's gonna analyze me, or number two, he's going to make me talk about my emotions, or number three, he's going to talk about stuff that just I won't be able to understand. And I can assure you, not going to happen. The topic today that we're going to talk about is the psychology of engagement. Now, listen, here's what I have learned about engagement, and people who do this right tend to have kind of the same experiences. When you look at engagement, what ends up happening is if you do this right, really what that allows us to do is it allows us to change behavior. Because what we want to do is we want to create an environment where our employees are doing the best, they're contributing, and everything is working right. But what we also find is that when people are engaged, there is a better chance for you to be able to develop them. You can take them from where they're at, and if they're really engaged and want to participate, you can take them to that place where they grow and develop and become better. Now, here's the really interesting thing about engagement. When we, as researchers, and being a neuroscientist, a lot of the stuff that I do is based on research. What we've discovered in research is that engaged environments really also do something that's even more important, which is attract better employees. When you have an engaged workforce, the people that tend to come into the workforce tend to be better and better and better. So, that's one of the great things about today is that I'm going to show you how to do this really quickly and give you some key principles and give you the start on how you can do this. So I've been a leader for a very, very long time. And what I've realized is that, the challenge that we have with a work environment where people aren't engaged is that they don't care. People who aren't engaged really don't care about the process, and they don't care what's going on. No, and you spend most of your time ends up being about putting out fires. It's not about getting your job done. It's about putting out fires. But the other thing that you really have to do on a regular basis is that it's just this constant follow-up. Your time is spent, like I said, putting out fires, but it's also spent trying to make sure that everybody's doing their job. And if they're not doing their job, following up with them, connecting, doing this. It's just like this merry-go-round of stuff that you have to do that really at the end of the day is a waste of time. And you end up, and I mean, the biggest fear is if they're not doing it, who's going to do it? Me, as a leader. I have to follow up and I have to do other people's jobs because they're not engaged in the process. On the other hand, if we do this right, here's what's going to happen. First of all, you're going to have people show up. Now, what do I mean by show up? Well, I mean physically show up, because a lot of times people who aren't engaged, they get the weekend flu where it's like Friday and they just don't show up. Or you also have people when people are engaged, they always show up for work. They're always doing what you need them to do. So they're showing up. They also, when you get this right, are going to actually contribute. they're going to be an active contributor to your organization, to your team, and to what you guys are trying to do as an organization. And really, they're going to complete the tasks, which at the end of the day, that's going to give you so much more freedom and so much more ability because your people are going to take that ownership. And at the end of the day, this is the type of environment that we're trying to create. What would change in your life if you had the ability to have a team that showed up, that did their jobs, that took ownership, that got those tasks done? How would that change your life, or how would that change your day at work? I only have 20 minutes to go through this stuff with you guys today, so it's going to be really, really quick, but I want to share something with you. And I know that this is also going to be on a podcast, so I'm going to try to describe physically what I'm doing. Most people, when they think about engagement, they look at it kind of like a line here, a spectrum. And on one end, it is, to create engagement, what we need to do is that we need to give people what they need. Not what they want, but what they need. And so things like, they need structure, they need to be held accountable, they need to be very specific in their job duties, they need to be followed up on. And a lot of leaders really look at their organization and their employees and feel like if I give them what they need, then they're going to give me what I want. Now, the problem with this is that this model of leadership was actually developed, believe it or not, in 1911. That's how old this model is. And it was written by a guy. There was a book called The Principles of Scientific Management, and it was written by a guy named John Taylor. And John Taylor basically said, what you do to be able to create an engaged environment, you give people very little room to wiggle around. You give them exactly what they need to get the job done. They don't need to think, they don't need to interact, they just need to do their job. And I'm the boss, they do what I say. This was developed in 1911. Obviously, that's a bit of a problem because the entire world has shifted. That doesn't work anymore. So what's happened is that they've gone to the other end of the spectrum, which is, all right, great. So to get people engaged, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them what they want. So what's the problem with that? Well, when you give people what they want, all of a sudden you are spending money, you're spending time, you're spending energy, and you're just constantly giving. So it's like, bonuses, comfy couches, free coffee. We'll give you a signing bonus, anything, just come work for us. Neither of those are the best way to do it, because what you have with need is if you're only giving people what they need, you're micromanaging. If you are only giving people what they want, you're just bribing them. Bribery only works until the bribe has been used. Then you have to come up with the next bribe and the next bribe and the next bribe. So when you look at the psychology of engagement, it's not giving people what they need. It's not giving people what they want. It is right smack dab in the middle there, where there is a balance between what they need and what they want. What I've discovered in all of my research and working with clients is that there's really 5 keys to employee engagement. And these 5 keys are universal. I've used these in North America. I've used them with my clients in Europe. I've used them with my clients in Asia and even in South America. So these 5 keys are universal when it comes to creating engagement. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them. I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to go through a couple of them really quickly here. Key number 1 is really building trust. What we've discovered in research is that the number 1 factor in an employee's level of engagement really is that trust factor. And that trust factor around, can I trust that my leader is going to do what I need so that I can be safe, to remove the barriers that are standing in my way of being successful? And can I trust them? Another key, the second key that we found in research really around employee engagement, is employee development. Employees want to know that they are growing. They want to know that they're becoming better. They want to know that there is an opportunity for them to become something different. Key number 3 really is compassion. Having compassion, recognizing that the people that are standing in front of you are not just an employee. They have a life outside of work. Now, granted, they spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week in your organization, depending on how it's structured, but they have a life outside of work. And those influences are going to negatively and positively influence how they work in the organization on a day-to-day basis. So learning how to have compassion around those things and see the person as a whole rather than just as an employee. The 4th key that we've discovered about employee engagement is it's really about a role adjustment. We as leaders, our role has changed. It used to be we set the vision, people do it what we tell them to do. That is not the case anymore. And it's frustrating for a lot of leaders who are in my age bracket who grew up in a place where the boss says you do. That doesn't work anymore. And so our role has significantly shifted to a place where we are counselor, we are emotional support dog, we are relationship coach, we're a whole bunch of different things. And that's a really, really tough shift for a lot of leaders to make. And younger leaders, they don't have the skills to do this quite yet. And so it's a really, really big challenge. And then the 5th key around employee engagement is really creating a clear vision for yourself, clear vision for the employee, and a clear vision for the organization. So we're going to be able to talk about 2 of these. And I picked 2 of them that I think are going to have the biggest impact as quickly as possible so that we can really get through this. Now, employee development, when I talk about employee development, what I'm talking about is that every single employee that you have in your organization is at a different level. When you look at the different levels of employees, there are some who are incredibly skilled already when you get them. They've got the skills, they've got the talents, they understand, and what we call the KSAOs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. Some people have those. So when you look at skills versus time, some people are already here when you first hire them. You don't have to go through a lot with them. Some people are down here, and over time, they're going to increase like that. Our job really is to be able to recognize opportunities to take this line of skill development and accelerate it as quickly as possible. And there's a whole other bunch of psychology around that. But one of the best ways to create this opportunity for employee development is around one-on-ones, having one-on-ones. Here's the key about one-on-ones. One-on-ones cannot be, I need to sit down and talk to you because you're making mistakes or you're screwing up. That's not a one-on-one. That's a disciplinary, tough conversation. That's a whole different ball of wax. One-on-ones are where you as a leader sit down with your employee and say, tell me about the struggles you're having right now. What are some of the challenges you're facing? And what are some of the barriers that are standing in your way? And let's make a plan together to help you overcome these barriers so that you can become more successful. You have less stress in your brain so that you can activate this part of the brain, which is the thinking part. That's what a one-on-one is. I recognize you guys are busy. I know that. I understand that. And me saying, hey, I want you to sit down and have one-on-ones with your employees, you're wondering, how the heck am I going to be able to accomplish this? And it's not going to get any better with what I'm about to say. One-on-ones, if you're not doing a one-on-one with your direct report every 2 weeks, it's not going to be effective. So that's one-on-ones. That is how to build development within your team, to develop them from where they're at to where they need to go as quickly as possible. And it really, again, it comes down to building that relationship. The second part, or the second thing, is really around values that I want to talk about. Creating clear vision. What we need to do, and part of this can be done in the one-on-ones, is to recognize that every single individual within your organization has a personal vision statement. They may not know what it is, and they may not know what drives it and what values drive that, but every single person in your organization has a value statement and a vision statement that drives their behavior. If you want to engage your employees in the work, figure out what that is for every single one of the employees that are your direct reports, and teach your supervisors how to do this. Teach your floor managers, your shop managers how to do this. Get inside these people's heads and say, why did you come to work today? What is driving your behavior? And what you're going to recognize is that every single one of them may have some similarities, but they're going to be different. And here's the key. Once you learn that, take what they value and connect it to what they do every single day. Give you a quick example, and then we're going to open it up to questions. One of my last things that I did was I was a director of operations for Western Canada for Chipotle Mexican Grill restaurants. And there needed to be exactness in onions, the cut size of the onions. You don't want them too big and you don't want them too small. There was a girl who worked for us that wanted to go to school to be a rocket scientist, to work at NASA. And she hated cutting onions. She was horrible at cutting onions. And I said to her one day, why are you cutting these onions? And she said, because I have to get a paycheck. And I said, you're missing the point. As a rocket scientist, as a NASA employee, you have to be exact or people die, correct? Yeah, absolutely. You cutting the onions to this perfect exact size, it's teaching you right now how to be exact in everything that you do, so that when you become a NASA scientist, you will have already built that habit. That's a really simple and easy way to do this. Jeff, how do we encourage those at the higher authority level than us to learn these techniques? Here's the way to do it, Jeff, is that what I've discovered is that when you try to spoon feed a baby, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to spit it out, right? If you try to spoon feed this or try to force it down somebody's throat, they're automatically going to reject it. Here's the technique that I teach my clients who are kind of mid to higher level management. If you want to get your CEO involved in this, do it yourself. Do it yourself. Don't tell anybody what you're doing. Do it yourself and get amazing results. Because at some point, if you do this right, it takes 90 days to change your employee engagement profile. In 90 days, when your employees are coming to work all the time, they're creating amazing products, et cetera, your boss is going to come to you and say, how on earth did you do this? And you're going to go, let me show you. Generally speaking, people will respond better to something that they already believe than something that you're trying to convert them to. Does that make sense, Jeff?
We got one that says, how do you measure engagement? And do you have any studies taking place in the business environment that shows data supporting the theory?
Yeah, for sure. There are, honestly, there's hundreds, if not thousands of articles to support what I'm teaching right now. So, I mean, you can go into any research database and say employee engagement, how do you do it? And you'll get article after article after article. One of the ways that we measure engagement is the Q12, the Gallup Q12. That's a tool that I use, and anybody can really use this on a surface level. You can also take it and really pull it apart and do a lot of statistical analysis. But what I do is it's a 12-question survey, and you just ask it, and you can get an idea of where you're at, and then apply these principles and then do the survey later and watch what happens. Because if you do this right, your employee engagement is going to go up. And again, this is something that you can take to Jeff's question. You can take this to your boss and say, I did this at the beginning. Here's how I did it. I did it right now. Here's the statistical difference.
We have another question. How do you engage people that are not your direct reports?
So my question is, why are you trying to engage people who aren't your direct reports? Is it because you are trying to build that culture within the organization? And if the answer is yes, then that's fine. Again, employee engagement is infectious. Generally speaking, and I'm going to do this really quick, there are 15% of the world that wake up and go, yes, I want to do this. I'm awesome. Let's do this. I want to be the best. There's about 15 to 20% that wake up and they're just mad. They're just mad. The rest of the people aren't sure how they're going to interact with the world until they get out into the world. That's your bucket right there. That's where you're going to find those people. And they are they're infected by either positive or negative. So I would say create that environment on your team, and that infection will grow as other employees go, well, how come you're so happy with your team? What are you guys doing there? It's again, it's marketing, unfortunately. It's internal employee engagement marketing.
Uh, Next question. Of the 5 keys to engagement, what step or steps do most organizations struggle with?
Recognizing that they need to make changes. That's the number one step, is recognizing that they need to make changes. Because what happens is that what I'm talking about here takes time and it takes energy. And as I said to you, I know you guys are busy. I get that. And so it's the whole going to the gym principle. You go to the gym for one day and you stand in the mirror, you're not going to see much results, but you put in the consistent time and energy, you're going to. It's the same thing here. You have to put in consistent time and energy, and most organizations aren't willing to wait. And ladies and gentlemen, it is 90 days. That's it. In 90 days, you can significantly shift your entire team or your entire organization if you simply say to them, what's going on in your world? What are the barriers that are standing in your way? And let's create a plan to help remove those barriers. 90 days.
We have one more question, but it's not necessarily related to the topic.
It's all good.
He asked what software do you use for your presentation and webcam overlay?
Yeah, it makes me look about 5% cooler by doing it. I use OBS, which is online broadcasting system. I don't even know if that's the way it is, but I use OBS and I just use overlays with that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jay. That was awesome. I love just having that little bit of knowledge, and it changes the way you think about things dramatically. So thank you so much. And
No problem. And
all
again,
of our
please,
attendees.
yeah, please feel free to reach out to me and connect with me, anybody who wants to learn more.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to let everybody have your contact information when we send out the recording. So thanks again. Everybody have a great holiday season. We'll be back with our next webinar in January of next year. So take care.